Hi everyone, welcome back to our last session of these 3 amazing days, weren't they? What do you think? Yeah, well, it's our closing plenary, but we still have something for you, a surprise in the end of this plenary. So now I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Maria Luisa Pérez Cañado, who sadly cannot be here face to face, but she's presenting her session virtually. So Maria Luisa Cañado is a full professor at the Department of English Philology of the University of Jaén, Spain. Her research interests are in applied linguistics, bilingual education, and new technologies in language learning. Her work has appeared in over 120 scholarly journals and edited volumes. She's also author or editor of 15 books on the interface of second language acquisition and second language teaching. And she's also editor or member of the editorial board of 18 international journals. Wow. Maria Luisa has given more than 150 lectures and talks in several countries. She's currently coordinating the MA degree on bilingual education and CLIL in Spain, as well as 4 European, national, and regional projects on attention to the diversity in CLIL. She has also been granted the Ben Macy Award for the quality of her scholarly contributions regarding issues that make a difference in higher education. So it's a pity that we don't have her face-to-face, but here today she will for sure enlighten us all on the topic of fostering inclusion in the post-COVID era. So, Maria Luisa, not the stage, the screen is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sonia, for such a warm and generous introduction. Bom dia, tudo bem? I am really heartbroken, as Sonia said, to not be able to be with you all face to face in my beloved Portugal. But I truly hope I can be there next year with you all in Lisbon. And I'm happy to at least be able to share this session with you today remotely. So a huge thank you to APPI for the invitation to be with you all today. And thank you so very much for having me. I'm going to go right ahead and share my screen with you because I'm delighted to be able to share with you today this session on a very hot topic right now on the English language teaching scene in general and on the bilingual education agenda in particular. And that is, as Sonia was mentioning, diversity, inclusion, and elitism, which have acquired a particularly sharp relief in the post-COVID area because COVID has been considered to aggravate lack of attention to diversity in our classrooms. And furthermore, we're now striving to make bilingual education for everyone. We're mainstreaming it school-wide, program-wide. And this is posing not just a huge challenge and an increased difficulty, but according to certain experts, it could jeopardize everything we have achieved in bilingual education. So according to one of the teachers that we interviewed, el bilingüismo murió cuando fue para todo el mundo, right? Bilingual education died when it was for everyone. So to ensure that CLIL stays very much alive at present, today I would like to address 3 overarching objectives with you. First, I would like to bring you with this session the latest empirical evidence in order to answer some of the most frequently asked questions vis-a-vis diversity and inclusion. I'd also like to equip you with practical stuff, with practical tips for methodology, for materials, for evaluation, and to provide you with exclusive access to certain materials, guidelines, and videos which are not yet available, but which I will be happy to share with you today in order to make our classrooms more inclusive. And you know, as I was preparing this talk the other day, I got to thinking, my goodness, what a past couple of years we've had. They have really been something else. I mean, we have lived a crisis on so many levels. I don't know if you're familiar with, for example, with what happened in Spain. In Spain, in these past few years, we've had a blizzard in Madrid We've had earthquakes in Granada, which is where I live. We've had volcano eruptions in the Canary Islands in La Palma. Now, of course, we have the heart-wrenching situation of the war on the Ukraine. And we've had to cope with the biggie, COVID, with which we're still grappling. And pedagogically, we have also lived times of crisis, because the rapid shift to online, to emergency online teaching, has caused this type of instruction to be very harshly criticized. And in bilingual education in CLIL, we have also lived a crisis, with hundreds of schools purportedly claiming to drop out of our bilingual programs. And you know, this in turn got me to thinking that Spain is different, as we say here in my country. We're different. This is a slogan for tourism, but I think this also applies to CLIL, because we're different, I'm happy to say and proud to say, because we currently have one of the most diversity sensitive bilingual education systems in Europe. And I'm going to share that with you so that you don't make our mistakes and you learn from our lessons. But on the downside, we are also distinctive for what I call el fenómeno del cuñadismo. By the way, I'm always blown away by how wonderfully you people here there in Portugal understand and speak Spanish, while we have huge difficulties understanding Portuguese. I don't know if you know the term cuñado in Spanish. It means brother-in-law. And I don't know if over there, your brothers-in-law, like here in Spain, know about everything. Okay, there's this kind of, I don't know if it's an urban legend or a hard and fast fact, that our brothers-in-law, it doesn't matter what topic you bring up, they know about it. Okay, they have an opinion which they firmly believe is true. This happens especially over Christmas dinner. And well, this is exactly what's happening with CLIL right now. Here, especially in Spain, but also in some parts of Europe, everybody, even if they haven't experienced bilingual education or taught about it or researched on it, they have an opinion which they firmly believe is the right one. This cuñadismo, of course, has a scientific name, okay? It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Basically, the less you know about something, the more you think you know. And this is causing a series of false myths, misapprehensions, misconceptions to appear around CLIL. And they're being fueled by newspaper articles, by blog and social media posts, even by the news on television. There was recently, in our Televisión Española, there was recently a piece of news on how bilingualism segregates, yeah? So just like there's a top 10 for Netflix, there is a top 10 of false myths that are proliferating around CLIL. And I think elitism is right up there at the top, right? And there's a veritable plethora of accusations besetting CLIL in this respect. It's considered an elitist nightmare, to have a brutal classism, to be an excuse for segregation. Is this true? This is precisely what I would like to answer with you today by breaking down those 3 overarching objectives that I mentioned previously into 7 specific goals. By the time we finish this session, I would like you to leave with a clear-cut concept of what diversity is from a theoretical stance. I'd also like to equip you, as I mentioned previously, with the latest stalwart empirical evidence to answer the uninformed haters. I'd like to complement this as well with practical pedagogical and evaluation techniques, which are primarily going to stem from the best practices of others across Europe. And I'd equally like to furnish specific guidelines for materials designed to cater for diversity. And all in all, to help you become acquainted with the top challenges that we have ahead and obviously how to tackle them, and to provide you with food for thought and lines of action to ensure that CLIL for all increasingly becomes a reality in our classrooms. So how am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to do this by playing the game of 20 questions. Well, actually, we're only going to have time for 15, okay? But I'd like to share with you the 15 most frequently asked questions that I've been getting on diversity in CLIL in these past 2 years of crisis, yeah? And in doing so, I'll be structuring the talk into 3 main sections, okay? After this initial introduction, I will then jump right into the 15 questions. And for each one, I would like to do 3 things, all right? First, obviously, I'd like to answer the question, provide you with a clear-cut reply. And I'll also be extracting for you, showcasing the main lesson that we have learned. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to be interspersing a little bit of what I call real English. Let me explain what I mean by this. I have to confess that I'm here in Spain, especially, very concerned with the language level of, in general, of our language teachers, but especially of our CLIL teachers, because they speak adequate English, but it's kind of textbookish or 19th century-ish. It's kind of obsolete. It doesn't sound natural. And English is changing really fast, right? So it's our obligation, it's incumbent upon us as CLIL teachers to be able to stay up to date with the latest English, with what I call real English, yeah? For example, to say something like wonderful in English, to illustrate how quickly this changes. In the 50s, if you watch a Cary Grant movie, you'll probably hear swell to say wonderful. In the 80s, when I was studying at the American School of the Hague, we were all going around saying, oh my God, that's so rad, from Radical. Hugh Grant then popularized excellent in British English in the 90s. And now people are saying something like awesome or sick, dope. If something is really sick, it's really cool. Or according to my nieces, who are my greatest source of real English, now what people are saying is lit. Oh my God, that's so lit. That means that's super cool. A lituation is a really cool situation. So you see how quickly this changes, yeah? And this is kind of like my personal crusade to overcome what I call the it's raining cats and dogs syndrome. We have to avoid wasting our precious time teaching and learning expressions that nobody ever uses, like it's raining cats and dogs. And we got to try and make our English a little bit more natural. So I'm going to be including, interspersing these real English expressions so that we kill two birds with one stone. And I'll be circling them in red wherever they appear so that you can identify them easily. And then at the end, I'll toss it back to you. I'll ask you a few questions, see what you think on everything that we've been saying. And I will also extract for you the broader takeaways of this talk. Okay? Sound good? You ready? Yeah? Okay, let's hit it. These are our 15 questions on elitism and in CLIL and diversity. And I think the necessary starting point is obviously this first question. What do we mean by diversity? So let's jump right into the fray. Let's go for it, yeah? To use a real English expression, as we say in Spanish, vamos al lío. And, diversity initially, in general language teaching and also in bilingual education, was associated simply with students who have special education needs, who have serious learning disabilities. But now bilingual education, as I was saying before, is being mainstreamed. It's being applied to everyone. Here in the south of Spain where I live, we no longer have CLIL and non-CLIL groups in the same school. The entire school is bilingual. So this means we necessarily have to broaden the scope of diversity as well to encompass not just special needs, but also different learning styles and levels, paces, backgrounds. How can we do this? Well, we've done it through the DD framework. Now, I call it DD because it capitalizes on the concepts of diversity, inclusion, differentiation, and integration. And diversity is kind of like the overarching concept, and it entails providing an adequate education to all students. It rests on the pillars of inclusion and differentiation. Inclusion also aims to respond to the learning needs of students, but from an asset-based perspective. It views diversity as a source of enrichment and as an opportunity to help learners who are on the fringe, on the margins, go from being outsiders to becoming participants. Differentiation targets students with different abilities by tailoring teaching to their zones of proximal development or multiple intelligences. And then all three concepts, a conflation of them, leads to the integration of students with different ability levels. And all four concepts dovetail to safeguard equitable access to CLIL and to offset the disenfranchisement of the most vulnerable and underserved learners. So the lesson learned here is that we now luckily have a clear-cut theoretical framework on inclusion which transcends, which goes beyond mere special education needs. And here I've just touched upon the surface, but if anyone is interested in checking out the full-fledged framework, it's in the introduction of a special issue entitled CLIL for All, which has just appeared in the International Journal of Bilingual Education. And the entire journal is available except for the introduction, which includes the DD framework. But as I mentioned before, I wanted to give you exclusive access to stuff. So I'd like to offer you a sneak peek into the framework by including it into an info pack. I've drawn up a dossier for you that you can download via a QR code that I'll be happy to provide at the end of the presentation. So you have exclusive access to the DD framework before it's even out. So having clarified what we mean by diversity, let's push forward to the second question. And people, I get this a lot. Yeah, a lot of people in these past 2 years have told me, Marisa, are critics right to question inclusion policies in bilingual programs? And you know, when I was thinking about this question, I started thinking, okay, when we started out in CLIL 20 years ago, more or less, the truth of the matter is that there was overstreaming. There was a kind of explicit selection of students. Those who wanted to participate in bilingual streams needed to accredit a certain subject knowledge, language level, or both. And in countries like Spain or Germany, where there were no admission criteria, there was covert streaming through what Lorenzo et al. Termed self-selection, which was bolstered by social class and parental choice. So basically what happened here is that we had coexisting CLIL and non-CLIL classes in the same school. And the best learners, the most intelligent, the most motivated, the most linguistically proficient would go into the CLIL stream, yeah? So to top it all off, or as we say in real English, to add insult to injury, homogeneity between CLIL and non-CLIL groups was not guaranteed. There was a complete dearth of materials. There were very vague pedagogical and evaluation strategies, and teacher training needs were high and satisfaction with support systems was low. So you know what? Yes, critics were right to question inclusion policies in bilingual programs at the beginning, yeah? Because you know what? CLIL was elitist in the past. And this is a tendency that we're ascertaining in all bilingual programs that are starting out. For example, now in Brazil, in Peru, in Colombia, there are initiatives to start embedding CLIL also in public education, and it's hard. Beginnings are difficult, and there will be a touch of elitism in CLIL at the beginning. This is something we need to come to terms with. But what's the sitch, to use a real English expression, what's the situation now? Now that we have 20 years of experience in many European countries like Spain? Well, in order to answer this question, we would need to break it up into 3 sub-questions, which are, first, are the best students still in the CLIL groups after 20 years? Second, what's the possible differential effect exerted by variables that we normally associate to elitism? And third, can CLIL work anywhere, even in the most disenfranchised settings? Let's look at them, shall we? First question, are the best students still in the bilingual groups? I'm happy to report that we have a very robust evidence base, as you can see from the past couple of years, which has tapped into this question. And these studies have compared CLIL and non-CLIL students in hundreds of randomly selected schools. And look at this, no statistically significant differences between them. So you know what? Nope, the best students are no longer in the CLIL groups. Or to put it another way, the CLIL and non-CLIL learners are increasingly homogeneous. Good news, right? What about the second question? What's the possible differential effect exerted by variables like rural-urban setting, socioeconomic status? Here we normally take the parents' educational level, yeah, as a proxy, and type of school. Well, again, we have research, especially in the last 5 years, which is very, very robust, that has explored this issue. And these studies have compared rural and urban, low, medium, and high socioeconomic status in private, public, and charter schools. And I wish I was there to actually, discuss this with you, but I'll anticipate. Who do you think was better, rural or urban students? The urban ones. Also, the high socioeconomic ones, and also the private school learners. Not surprising, right? But what is surprising is this was only the case for the non-bilingual learners. In the CLIL groups, the bilingual program canceled out. Whoops, something happened with the program, I believe. Okay. Right. CLIL programs were canceling out these differences, yeah? And there has been recent research tapping into why this is the case. This research has been spearheaded by Anna Halbach at the University of Alcalá, and they found 3 main reasons for the leveler effect of CLIL. First, CLIL learners have a sense of group belongingness, which makes them feel proud and which makes them be more responsible. Second, they're more used to not having their parents be able to help them with homework, so they're more autonomous. And third, teachers are aware of the increased cognitive challenge inherent in CLIL, so they provide more language-sensitive teaching, which makes it more accessible for everyone. So wonderful news, lesson learned, CLIL is canceling out differences. It's acting as a leveler across settings and contexts. And this is a trend that is emerging again and again. It's becoming a pattern. So we're going to have to keep our eye on it in the immediate future. And third question, does CLIL have the potential to work everywhere, even in the most disenfranchised settings? Think, for example, of a public, rural, bilingual high school in a small town with parents who have a low socioeconomic level, with a majority of gypsy ethnicity. This is the case of ES Montes Orientales in Isnayoz, which is a teeny tiny town in the province of Granada, where I live in the south of Spain. We went into this public bilingual high school and we compared perfectly homogeneous CLIL and non-CLIL students, and look at this. The CLIL students were better across the board. CLIL was working magnificently in Isnayoz. I was blown away by these kids. They were speaking English in the hallways. They followed chemistry classes 100% in English. They carried out extremely sophisticated project work in English. If you ask me, it was probably due to the teaching team, because the teachers had a C2 level. They were extremely well versed in CLIL, and they believed in bilingual education. They were greatly committed. So, you know, when I was approached by Historias de Luz to tape a mini documentary on our project, they said, Marisa, where do you want to record this? And I didn't doubt for a second. I said, in Isnayoz, so that everybody can see that how these children who would otherwise never have had the opportunity to learn bilingually are thriving in a CLIL program. And you know what? I always like to share a personal anecdote to answer this question. I know the anecdote is not scientific, okay? It's not generalizable, but I think it's really illustrative because, as I mentioned before, I live in Granada. And pre-COVID, my gym, which is unfortunately now closed due to the pandemic, was in La Chana. Now, La Chana is a socioeconomically dodgy area in Granada. And right next to my gym, there was a public bilingual high school. And right before COVID, I stopped to take a picture because you know how teenagers will write graffiti saying, Maria te amo, right? Well, the graffiti was in English, in La Chana, on the wall of the high school, right? So yes, CLIL can work even in Isnayoz, even in La Chana, because it's affording everyone, as Javier Gisbert has put it, what was previously reserved for the elites, yeah? So very good news on that front, which means that CLIL right now is no longer as elitist as it was. But what about the future? What are the main challenges in fostering inclusion in CLIL in the future now that it's being mainstreamed? Because the latest research is evincing that in the current CLIL scenario, CLIL for everyone, it's not going to cut it. It's not going to work due to 5 main reasons. The first reason is that we didn't really know what diversity was theoretically. We luckily now have the DD framework, but there was a lack of clear-cut framework in this sense. Secondly, and I think this is the top challenge according to our latest studies, teachers feel hugely daunted by the lack of materials for diversity. They have to find them, adapt them, design them themselves. This is time-consuming and very challenging. We also lack clear-cut pedagogical and evaluation strategies to accommodate differentiation in our classrooms. And teacher training needs are high across the board. According to our latest research, especially on 3 fronts, materials, scaffolding, and student-centered methodologies, which are precisely the techniques that teachers claim to use more. So it's as if they want to refine to perfection what they're already doing. And finally, there's a conspicuous lack of satisfaction with the support systems that are set in place, especially in terms of teacher-student ratios, which are still high, time to coordinate with colleagues, and the support of language assistance. So you know what? We need to rethink and re-engineer CLIL programs if we really want them to be for everyone. We need to plus it up. Yeah, we need to course correct. We need to think out of the box, do something different if we want to keep this show on the road. But hey, we're not here to complain, right? We're here to provide solutions. So what are we doing about it? Well, I'm happy to report we're working on it, okay? Through 4 research projects, which are encompassed under the umbrella of ADIBE, Attention to Diversity in Bilingual Education. And let me share with you what we've done on 6 main fronts through ADIBE. First, we've designed the DD framework that I mentioned previously, right? So that we know what we mean by diversity and we brought in the concept. Second, right now, we're in the process of conducting a quantitative study to determine the impact of CLIL on L1, L2, and content learning with 3 tiers, 3 levels of achievers in terms of the variables that you have on screen, to answer the overarching question of whether CLIL truly works with everyone, which we don't really know yet. Qualitatively, we've also designed and validated questionnaires, interview and observation protocols to identify the main difficulties, best practices, and chief training needs of teachers to step up to diversity. And this is going to feed into an app which will allow teachers to take a personalized diagnosis of their main training needs. And I've included the questionnaire, by the way, in the info pack as well. I'll give you the QR code at the end in case you already want to take that personalized diagnosis. And we've designed also a batch of original materials, which we were sorely lacking, which accommodate differentiation. They have what we call differentiation triangulation. That is differentiation on 3 fronts, right? First, in the first phase, what we do with the materials is group learners according to ability into 3 groups, yeah? And we work on the same content, but with differentiated activities according to their level. So what we call achievers needing help are provided with a lot of scaffolding, and they're maybe asked, according to Bloom's taxonomy, simply to understand. That's it. Mid-level achievers will probably be required to evaluate, and high-level achievers will have less scaffolding, and they will be asked to produce, yeah? And then in a second phase, we mix them up into different levels, and together, building on their strengths and weaknesses, they have to work towards a final outcome. And there's differentiation in terms of the student-centered methodologies that we employ. They include cooperative learning, multiple intelligences, task-based language teaching, project-based learning. And there's also differentiation in the 3rd phase, which is the final product, because they can either choose to design an infographic, an interactive presentation, or a video. It's up to them, yeah? And these materials are project-based, and they are what we call transdisciplinary, because they include the L1, the L2, and a minimum of 3 content subjects. Now, if you're interested in the materials, you can also, I give you again exclusive access through this QR code. You can download them and have examples from 6 different European countries. I'll also be happy to pass on the link to Sonia as well as the PowerPoint in case you can't scan it right now. Accompanying the materials, we have equally designed a sort of guidelines manual with pedagogical tips and evaluation techniques that we were previously lacking. And here we've also designed what we call the ADIBE principles that I've also included in your info pack to address diversity. And we have taped what we call CLIL pills. They're kind of like, you guys like TikTok? It's kind of like mini TikTok videos, couple of minutes long, no more. And we have key experts in the field here providing short, clear-cut answers to some of the greatest challenges on diversity that we have diagnosed through the project. Yeah, these are available on our YouTube channel, and I'll tell you about that in question 15. And finally, we've also designed and piloted a teacher training course for diversity, where we have encouraged teachers from 6 different European countries to share their best practices via videos. So all in all, we're on it. Yeah, we're working on catering to diversity. And I'll tell you exactly where you can access everything that I've just mentioned in question 15. So stay tuned. I was precisely talking, if you remember a second ago, about learning from the best practices of others. So let me offer you a sneak peek into what we found through the project, yeah? Because we engage a lot, I don't know over there in Portugal, but here in Spain, We call it another phenomenon, like el cuñadismo. We call it ombliguismo, which is like navel gazing. We tend to look at our own navel. That's it. We look at our classroom, our school. This also happens a lot at university. And we don't go beyond. We don't broaden our horizons. Whereas according to the experts, there should be increased research at the supranational level so that we learn from each other. And this is exactly what we did through the ADIBE project. We favored learning on the best practices on catering to diversity in Spain, the UK, Italy, Finland, Austria, and Germany. And what we found reminds me a lot of this quote. I don't know if you've heard this quote. I use it a lot in my intercultural classes. Your car is German, your vodka is Russian, your pizza is Italian, your coffee is Brazilian, and you complain that your neighbor is an immigrant. Hello, pull yourself together, right? Well, we found something similar for diversity in CLIL. We found that if you want to learn about good lesson planning, you need to look at Finland. Austria is tops for student-centered methodologies for diversity. The UK excels at materials design. Italy rocks ICT options, and we are particularly distinctive for our assessment procedures. So bottom line, lesson learned, we can learn a great deal from others. So let's keep our eye on that supranational perspective. And what exactly did we learn? Let me delve deeper into this so that I can give you practical tips, okay? We learned pedagogical tips from the different countries in order to integrate latecomers into the program. Because normally in bilingual programs, we can have in the same class, students who have been learning through CLIL from age 6 with students who just started out on CLIL. So they're hugely heterogeneous, and this is a tremendous challenge. Well, we found as pedagogical tips that, for example, in the UK, they very fruitfully use interdisciplinary collaboration. And the English subject is truly important because these kids are going to have a very heterogeneous English level. So it's up to the English teacher to try and homogenize, harmonize. And in the UK, they start out from a sort of diagnostic test, and then they work collaboratively to track progress through a sort of joint progress book. Yeah, so they work together, they collaborate. In Spain, we found that a lot of teachers are relying on extramural exposure. Now, I love Portugal among many reasons because you guys don't dub, right? You've got subtitles and that impacts our language level. But here in Spain, we dub everything. So we don't have access to English beyond the classroom. So one great way to go, even if you subtitle, is to enhance exposure to the language. And a lot of Spanish teachers get students to watch YouTube clips as homework, 10, 15 minutes a day, simply for language catch-up, for language exposure. It can be on anything, whatever floats their boat, as we say in real English, whatever they like. It can be a makeup tutorial on TikTok. It can be a little YouTube clip on cars, anything, as long as it's getting them to listen to English. Another tip that a lot of countries are incorporating involves materials. Materials, the static textbook-based materials that we have are no longer going to cut it. We need transdisciplinary, project-based, tier-level, multimodal, interactive materials to truly integrate diverse types of learners. Scaffolding is also a great way to go with all the techniques that you guys who are at the grassroots level know better than I do, right? Both product and process-based. And student-centered methodologies have also found to be very beneficial. Methodologies like projects, tasks, multiple intelligences, cooperative learning with the diverse techniques that it allows. And finally, capitalizing on diverse groupings is also very productive. For example, we can create learning stations to promote an inclusive atmosphere in the classroom, or get students to work according to same ability so that we can provide extra reinforcement and help, or mix them up so they build on each other's strengths and weaknesses. So bottom line, yes, all these techniques will require an increased workload for us teachers, as always, right? But hey, at least we know we have quite a few successful tips at our reach. Let's give them a shot. Let's try them out. Let's suss them out and see what works, yeah? Let me also share with you some tips for evaluation that we learned from the supranational perspective, okay? For example, again, in the UK, we found that they don't assess on the same level. They depart from personalized objectives, depending on the level, and then they vary grading criteria to cater for different abilities, which is an interesting procedure, yeah? Rubrics and templates for project-based learning were also found extremely productive, as well as working in self and co-assessment. And interestingly, through ADIBE, we found that teachers tend to rely more on ongoing assessment for diversity than on final assessment. So the go-to strategies in ongoing assessment are, for example, providing detailed guidelines as extra support, also personalized and regular feedback in terms of ability, and finally, adapting both the activities done in class and those assigned for homework. We still have quite a little bit of progress to make in terms of final summative assessment, but productive techniques included highlighting keywords in the exam or adapting its vocabulary, providing different versions, or allowing students more time to take the exam. So again, it seems that the one-size-fits-all model, the same kind of evaluation for everyone, el café para todos, as we say here in Spain, it's not going to cut it. It's not going to work. We need to diversify also in terms of evaluation. Yeah. So there you go. Some techniques, some tips, some recommendations, practical stuff that we learned from the project. And now let me turn to a slightly different topic, which is teacher training. Let me share with you a couple of questions that are also very frequently asked in this arena. The first one I get is, Marisa, how can we train teachers to cater for diversity? Because what we're doing is not enough. We have to up the game, yeah? Hay que subir de nivel. We have to do something different. And that's true, right? What we found through our project is that it's crucial to depart from a relevant needs analysis in our context so that we tailor-make our courses to ensure that we're targeting real needs, yeah? And again, according to research, the ideal teacher training course for diversity would probably have a three-pronged structure, little bit of theory, not a lot, little bit, lots of practical stuff, methodologies, scaffolding techniques, evaluation, groupings, materials design would be the third pillar, yeah? And this kind of course would ideally be offered in a tailor-made way through teacher training centers, through teacher organizations, also within our undergraduate degrees and within our master's programs, like the master's program that we have at the University of Jaén, which is 100% online, and where we have a specific subject on catering to diversity in CLIL. And all this should ideally be made freely accessible through open educational resources so that it has the greatest outreach possible, yeah? So the lesson learned here is that the three-pronged model, TPM, would probably be the ideal one to help teachers move from more control to freer practice in stepping up to diversity. But you know, tackling this challenge of inclusion requires much more than just mere training, as we have just mentioned. It also requires helping teachers cope, I would say almost psychologically with it, yeah? So we need to do a lot of, as we say in real English, hand-holding, yeah? We have to lead them by the hand, accompany them throughout the process. How can we do this? Well, through ADIBE, we suggest 4 main tips. First tip, knowledge is power. Make sure that we equip teachers that you are familiar with where we can access materials and tips and evaluation techniques to accommodate diversity, because that will empower teachers, that will help them feel more in control. Second, don't go overwhelming yourselves. Start small. Don't try out 15 techniques for diversity at the same time. Try out one, see how it works, then refine, retool, and hey, go ahead and scale it up gradually. Third, don't go it alone. Seek out support through the multi-tiered systems from your colleagues, authorities, parents, language assistants, multi-professional teams. This will help make the heavy load of diversity be just that little bit lighter, yeah? And finally, it's all about the attitude. This is kind of like the COVID vaccine. The benefits outweigh the pitfalls of CLIL. So we need to have a can-do attitude, or as they say in Dunkin' Donuts, do you like Dunkin' Donuts? I love Dunkin' Donuts. They call it a can-do attitude, right? Because research has evinced that success of bilingual programs relies more than on any other variable on us, the teachers, on our commitment, on our motivation. So, hey, we got this. We can do this. We've set CLIL in motion. what's a little diversity, right? We can work with that. So it's on us. It depends on us. So bring it on. As we say in Spanish, a coger el toro por los cuernos. Take the bull by the horns, right? We can do it. The last few questions that I wanted to share with you are both important and controversial. I think this 13th one is hugely important because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, there's a very fresh wave of criticism against CLIL with false myths, with misconceptions plaguing CLIL. So this has caused many people to ask me, Marisa, is there still faith in bilingual education? After all this criticism, will parents continue to enroll their children in CLIL schools? Well, you know me, I'm a huge believer in empirical evidence. So we carried out a study with over 2,500 respondents. This was just 1 year ago, so very fresh data. And we found that teachers, despite the increased challenge inherent in diversity, consider that they can do it. They're equipped, Students, we found, overwhelmingly had faith in their teachers' abilities to cope with diversity. And parents had blind faith in the teachers, in the methodology, and in the support systems to cater to diversity in CLIL. And interestingly, we found that it was not only the parents with a low socioeconomic status, as in previous studies, who had faith, but even those with a high socioeconomic status. So bottom line, lesson learned here is that bilingual education is still regarded as prestigious and worthwhile. There's buy-in from frontline stakeholders. So we're still in business, right? There is faith from those who have to decide whether to register their children in bilingual programs. And finally, let me throw in a controversial question and be a little bit of a devil's advocate, okay? I was talking about COVID, how COVID has aggravated lack of attention to diversity. And there are many people who ask, has the shift to online learning prevented us from catering to diversity? Well, online learning, we found in many contexts, is really getting slammed. It's getting harshly criticized. And through the Neolaya Alliance at university and through the JRC technical report in primary and secondary education, we carried out studies to determine whether it has truly prevented us from catering to diversity. And we found through these studies that there were pitfalls and affordances of online learning. Okay, so what I'm going to do is be a little bit of a devil's advocate, and for each pitfall, say yes, but, and also provide an affordance found through research. Okay, so yes, research found that due to COVID, there was inadequate access to technology and the internet. But on the upside, this has caused governments to more greatly equip schools with technological resources and to be more aware of the need to also enhance teacher training for digital competence, which is good news. Secondly, you know this, I know this, online teaching has entailed a much greater workload, sometimes verging on overwhelming. As one of the students that we interviewed said, I haven't worked more in my entire life as a student. And it also applies to us teachers. But on the upside, according to the JRC report of the European Commission, curricula have been pruned and adjusted to the core. They've been reduced, and this has made them more meaningful and more manageable. So that's food for thought there, right? Third, it is true that sometimes vulnerable students have gotten the short end of the stick, especially in the bubble groups that were created, which tended to reinforce homogeneity rather than diversity. But governments during COVID also pushed down the teacher-student ratio. And we realized that this is the way to go because this allowed us to provide more individualized attention. And when untimely feedback was provided, students felt alone in the online learning process. They felt they were left to their own devices. But this also made us reflect on something that's happening also in Spain a lot. We tend to spoon feed our learners. We tend to give them everything done. And this caused them to be more autonomous and independent, right? Which are crucial 21st century soft skills that we should be developing. And finally, it is true that concerns were voiced for a lack of personal touch with online teaching is kind of colder, but Students also acknowledged that teachers were more available, flexible, adaptable, understanding, invested, and committed. These are adjectives they used. And we equally found that we were in constant touch with the students through online forums, through email, through tutorials, through webinars, etc. So all this got me to thinking on this quote that I read in a recent interview, and that is that new technologies generate opportunities to make learning memorable, but the essence of teaching is in face-to-face interaction. Now, I know many of you will agree with this quote. I do as well, but pre-COVID, I would have tended to agree more. Now, with my experience and also experience in over 10 years of teaching in online masters, I have to confess that I can use the exact same methodologies online and in person. For example, I use the jigsaw procedure in cooperative learning a lot. I can do that beautifully through the Zoom breakout rooms. Secondly, I thought I was a much better teacher face-to-face. Turns out I can also establish the same rapport online with my students. And because I'm in constant touch with them, yeah, much more so than when I saw them twice a week, face-to-face. And third, I can actually monitor their performance in a much more individualized way because everything that they write is saved for my subsequent supervision. So you know what? Lesson learned here, to be controversial, if it's properly done, if we toss in the right ingredients, online teaching can be a success story. I don't know what you think. Maybe we can discuss it later, but I did want to be a little bit of a devil's advocate there. And final question, we near the end. How can we make all this available to the broader educational community? I promised I would give you this in question 7, yeah? So everything that I've mentioned here today is freely available as open educational resources. The questionnaires, the materials, yeah, and they're on our webpage. I'll tell you in a second. You can also access further information on the project through a Powtoon and through leaflets with detailed info. And the ADIBE app for you to take a personalized diagnosis of your main needs for diversity is about to come out, so stay tuned for that. The CLIL pills, the online pedagogical video guides, have been recorded by some of these outstanding figures in the world of CLIL, and they're available on our YouTube channel. And everything is accessible on our webpage, adibeproject.com. In case you want to check it out, just click and download everything for free directly, as well as on our social media, right? You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and as I was mentioning before, on YouTube. So you can watch the CLIL pills directly on our webpage or on our YouTube channel. Yeah, so check it out. Check it all out if it's a topic that you might find interesting. Okay, so to use a real English expression, let's wrap it up, shall we? Over the past 45 minutes or so, we have been addressing 3 overarching objectives, 7 specific goals, and 15 frequently asked questions. Not too shabby, huh? Not bad at all. Through them, I hope to have provided you, as I promised in the introduction, with food for thought, okay, and with lines of action, yeah? So let me ask questions. I can't actually see you guys very well because it's kind of dark, but if you nod or you say no, I'll be able to see you, yeah? So if I ask you now after this talk, on the basis of the empirical evidence we have seen, was CLIL elitist in the past? What would you say, yes or no? Yes, it absolutely was, you're right. We started out, remember, when we start out in CLIL, it's something we need to accept. It's going to be slightly elitist. But what about now? Is it elitist now? Are CLIL and no-CLIL groups increasingly homogeneous? We saw that they are indeed, right? That there were no differences any longer. The best students were no longer in the CLIL groups. And are differences in terms of key variables less conspicuous, less apparent in the CLIL groups? They absolutely are. Remember, CLIL is acting as a leveler and eliminating them. And can CLIL work even in Isnadios and in La Chana? What do you say? Yes, it absolutely can, provided that it's done adequately. And I think that the most important question of all is, are you walking away with a few further ideas to step up to the challenge of diversity? Well, I truly hope so. That was my job for this presentation. I hope to have attained it, yeah? And all that's left for me to do is to extract for you my 5 broad takeaways from the entire talk. And the first takeaway, for it, I would quote Taylor Swift. Yeah, you know Taylor Swift. She's got a song that says, haters gonna hate, hate, hate. But as she says in the same song, we have to shake it off. Yeah, we have to ensure that we overcome el cuñadismo, brother-in-lawism, with research. And we stop harping on whether CLIL is elitist and it segregates, and shift our attention to setting in place measures to ensure that it works with over and underachievers alike. Second main takeaway, let me throw out my Spanish pride for a second. Spain is still very conspicuous on the diversity map. So make sure that you don't make our same mistakes and you learn from our lessons, which I hope to have shared with you. And these lessons, I think, are that first, CLIL provision as it stands is not going to cut it. It's not going to fit the bill. As Henry Ford said, if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always got. We need to shake things up. We need to do something different. We need to continue updating, upgrading, and upscaling our CLIL provision. How can we do this? Well, the way forward lies in learning, especially from the best practices of others. And here I have identified for you key areas of expertise that we can learn from others and then apply them in our context, tweaking them as necessary to ensure they also work. And final, perhaps the most important takeaway is that when the going gets tough, which it will, remember, as we say in English, the tough get going. And the tough get going by remembering, as we have seen here today, that there is still faith in bilingual education. And now we have 20 years of experience and instruments and commitment and motivation and a growing body of empirical evidence to ensure that we keep this show on the road and ensure that CLIL for all truly becomes a reality. So on that exciting road that we still have ahead towards diversity in CLIL, well, you know what, people, I'm not going to lie. The road is not going to look like this, straight out into the horizon without any obstacles or hurdles. No. Sometimes it's going to look like this, a hot mess. Most of the time, it's probably going to be like this with its twists and turns and ups and downs. So on that road that we still have ahead towards catering for diversity, that's us. Remember, as we have showcased here today, the faith, the instruments, the evidence we have, and make sure that you remember we have what it takes to kill it, crush it, or slay it, as we say in real English, right? To make it happen. So the most important real English expression of all is this one. Own it, right? Move forward with confidence because we've got what it takes to ensure that CLIL stays on track, right? We've set it in motion. What's a little diversity, right? We've got the vaccine. All we're going to need now are the booster shots to ensure that we keep CLIL on track, right? So I wish you all the best on that exciting road, on that exciting journey towards diversity that we still have ahead. I hope our paths meet again, maybe in the FIEB conference, huge bilingual conference that we're holding in my university in October, and where we await you with open arms. And until then, I thank you so much for your attention. It's been so lit to work with you, and I remain at your disposal for any questions that you might have now or in the future. Thank you so much, and you can download, as promised, the info pack from this QR code. Muito, muito obrigada.
Thank you, Maria. Well, I don't know what to say after this. Well, just thank you so much. You provided lots of information about CLIL and bilingual education, but the key topic, well, at least for me, was to foster diversity. So thank you so much, Maria. Hope we get, I hope we can get you face-to-face in a future event with APPI, okay? Thank you so much. Do you have any questions for Maria? Yes, I think we have some questions.
Wonderful.
Oh, but can you show the QR code, please?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Happy to. Here it is. And Sonia, I'll be happy to also send you the info pack in PDF if you like, and you can share it or upload it on the web page or share it with your participants. And of course, if anyone wants the PowerPoint, if you also want the PDF, shoot me an email and I'll send it to you right away.
Yes, I would think that, because that way we can put all the stuff in our webpage and all the participants can have access to it.
Wonderful.
Just a second, Marisa. Another question? No? It's not working? Not
It's
active?
not?
No.
I think, well, yeah, sometimes it appears like click on access in PDF or something like that. But if it's not, no worries. Sonia, I'll send it today. I'll send it in an email so that you can share and upload on the webpage, just in case.
Okay, thank you so much, Marisa. So,
My pleasure.
a warm applause again.
Thank you so much. And congratulations on a hugely successful conference.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye, Marisa.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we're almost in the end of these 3 days. Wow, what, what a session. I think we've got some surprise before we're going, right? So the first one will be a video, right? So can we have it? Okay, go ahead.